What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are finally here. We are going to jump into the Fall of the Mutant story arc. Now, this was the second crossover ever done in X-Men comics, but it was a tad bit different from the Mutant Massacre crossover. And what I mean by that is, when it came to the Mutant Massacre, it was an actual crossover, meaning that you had all the different books being able to cross over with one another. You had X-Factor, X-Men, New Mutants, Thor, Daredevil, and also Power Pack being able to cross over into each other books. Except when it comes to Fall of the Mutants, you don't really have all these different kind of teams or characters being able to jump into each other books. The entire point of this crossover is to begin the downfall for the mutant race. And what I mean by that is, before this story arc, the mutant race was already getting a lot of hate from the human race. But at this point right here in Marvel Comics, you have the humans begin to hate the mutants even more. We hit an all-time low, to the point where you're going to have new teams or new enemies pop up and try to begin the process of getting rid of the mutant race. Now, when it comes to X-Factor, their new enemy is not really a human, it's really more Apocalypse. But his goal is not to get rid of the mutants, but to get rid of the human race. But with Apocalypse being here, he's going to bring in more problems for the mutant race, rather than actually help out the mutant race. And you see what I mean as we dive into today's video. And so getting into today's storyline, we do pick up with X-Factor arriving to Apocalypse Base. Now remember, Apocalypse Base is technically this floating ship or floating spacecraft that he had basically built out of unknown technology. Now at the end of our last video, we saw X-Factor getting teleported away, but we were left to wonder where to, and now we know where. They were teleported over to the base of Apocalypse. Now, when they are confronted by Apocalypse, they are kind of surprised to see him again. Because remember, the last time they saw Apocalypse, he honestly did not try to fight against them. Matter of fact, he used other mutants to fight against X-Factor. And once the battle was no longer going his way, but also his plans were beginning to fall apart, Homeboy dipped out, and our heroes were left to wonder who in the world was Apocalypse and what could he possibly be up to. But here he is again now, and he says, I want you guys to join my side because I'm trying to help out the mutant race. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to Apocalypse, he's really big on survival of the fittest. Now, that is really important because with Apocalypse, he believes that weak people do not deserve to live. Only the strong deserve to live. Now, here's the thing though. He believes that humans are weak, and so with that, they deserve to die. Now, the only reason why he thinks that because when it comes to humans, they are full of fear, they are full of hatred, they are full of greed. And that shows weakness in their blood. And so for Apocalypse, they have to go. And he is hoping that X-Factor will join his side. He has been watching them. He realized that they have gone through really different kinds of tragedies, but they had overcome those different kinds of tragedies. And so that was another example of the idea that they are strong people, strong mutants that should join his side. And so he says, your whole idea of trying to accomplish Charles Xavier's dream is stupid. There's no way that humans and mutants are going to be able to live together in harmony. So why not go ahead and join my side and help me wipe out the human race? Now, of course, you do have X-Factor say no, like, hey, We are the good guys here. You're the bad guys. Why in the world would we join your side? Now, here's the thing. Apocalypse kind of knew that they were going to say no, but he still had a little bit of hope in the idea of them joining his side. But either way, he does release his 3 horsemen all over again to fight against our heroes. And of course, that would be war, pestilence, and famine. And so now, with those 3 horsemen being out there, they are going to fight against our heroes. Now, here is something else I do want to mention, and that would be pestilence. Because the last time our heroes fought against the 3 horsemen, Beast got very ill because of her, because that's her ability, to give you random illness. And so when Beast got that, he was able to recover, but it began to make him stronger. But here comes the bad side effect. With him getting stronger, he's becoming, well, not as smart as he used to be. And so he's technically not really thinking things through when it comes to fighting against the 4 horsemen. But either way, you have X Factor in the 4 horsemen battle against each other. And this is Apocalypse trying to show them that, listen, I pick these guys because they are strong. They are actually capable of actually defeating you. And once they do that, I'm hoping that you realize that I'm the better choice. But to also help you get revenge against the humans. The humans were the ones who got rid of your best friend, Angel. Now remember, we had to skip over a few books. Angel had committed suicide, or we were led to believe he did. We kind of got the idea that Cameron Hodge had possibly killed off Angel and made it look like he committed suicide. But in reality, he didn't do that. But either way, you do have our heroes trying their best to fight against, well, the 3 horsemen. Now, as the fight goes on, you have Apocalypse kind of get tired of the idea of watching X Factor fight against the 3 horsemen. Watching X Factor being able to somewhat bounce back every single time they get knocked down by one of the 3 horsemen. But this is also Apocalypse saying, it's about time for me to introduce the 4th and final horseman. And that would be Archangel. Now at first, our heroes have no idea who this man is. But then Jean Grey realized who it is. It's Warrington. It's Warren. It's Angel. They're kind of like, oh my God, you're alive. Because again, they believed that he had committed suicide. Now, they kind of got the idea that Cameron Hodge had possibly killed off Angel and made it look like he committed suicide. But here he is right now. And you have Apocalypse say, I saved him. It was humans that broke this man down, took his money, took his wing, took his soul. It was me who brought him back up again. It was me to help him realize that humans deserve to be killed off. They are weak, pathetic, and that is where he comes in. He is my death horseman, and he will bring death to all humans across New York and possibly the world. Now, you do have our heroes try their best to fight against Archangel, but they lose the battle so easily. They are defeated and then bound to these different devices to make them watch what happens next. And so we kind of find out what Apocalypse is about to do next. See, when it comes to Apocalypse, he does tell his 4 horsemen, it's time for you guys to go out there and attack Manhattan. It's time for you guys to begin the process of killing off the weak. Of course, killing off the humans. Now, X Factor, they can't do anything about it. And the reason why? Because they're bound to those devices. Now, here is something else I do want to talk about, and that would be Caliban. Because remember, when it came to Angel's death, he died. And of course, he was replaced by Caliban. And Caliban was part of the Morlocks. Now, the Morlocks were a group of mutants who lived under New York in the sewers. And the reason why, because sometimes when a mutant gains their abilities, their body also changes as well, to the point where they're no longer able to hide in the public. And so you had a group of mutants go down into the sewers to live a somewhat normal life. But the thing was, when it came to the Morlocks, most of them were killed off by the Marauders. Their home was lost thanks to the Marauders. And that took place back in the Mutant Massacre storyline. By the way, we do have a playlist covering that entire event. Either way, when it came to Caliban, after losing his home, he wanted to stay with X Factor, which he did. And so he replaced Angel. Except when it came to the three horsemen and also X Factor fighting against each other, well, everyone forgot about Caliban. And so when he reappears, our heroes believe that he is going to release them from their bound devices. But he doesn't. Instead, he says, listen, I saw what happened to Angel. He was turned into Archangel, a weapon to be used by Apocalypse against the human's race. But now I realize I want the same thing for myself as well. And so he walks over to Apocalypse and says, I want you to do the same thing you did to Archangel. Turn me into a weapon that you can use so that I am able to get revenge against the people who have hurt me. And of course, he is talking about the Marauders, the evil mutant group. And so that is his goal. And so now one of the members of X Factor has joined Apocalypse's side. And so as we dive into the next chapter, well, we do pick up with the four horsemen of Apocalypse just going on a rampage. They are literally attacking the entire city, causing damage to almost every single building in their path. Now, here is something else I do want to mention. When it comes to Apocalypse, he does begin to talk about what is happening around this point in X-Men comics. And what I mean by that is, earlier I told you guys that Fall of the Mutants is technically the beginning point of where you had the human race try to think of new kinds of ways to get rid of mutants. And so when it comes to Apocalypse, he also mentions that the American government is beginning the process of making new laws that could affect mutants to hopefully remove them from America. And so when it comes to Apocalypse, that is another reason to why to kill off the human race. Because look at them. They couldn't just adjust to us being around. They couldn't actually fight us in a fair battle. Instead, they try to make laws to get rid of us. That is a weak person kind of move. And the only reason why they are doing that because they don't fit in when it comes to the schemes of the future of evolution. And so it's Apocalypse saying that is another reason why they deserve to be killed off. Now, when it comes to X Factor, they are able to break free from the containments. And once they're able to do that, they begin to, well, do some damage to the ship that belongs to Apocalypse. Now, here's the problem though. Our heroes have no idea how this ship actually works. And so with them just going around and just trying to wreck the entire ship, well, that begins a new problem for our heroes, because now the ship is beginning to absorb all light and energy from Manhattan, which could be a very huge problem down the road for our heroes. Now, because it did cause a lot of damage to the actual aircraft, you do have Jean Grey and Cyclops be thrown off the actual aircraft. And unfortunately, they can't find their way back onto it because on the outside of the aircraft, well, it looks invisible. You can't see it. And so our heroes are wondering, what in the world can they do next? And you have Cyclops say, well, we have to focus on the four horsemen because they are continuing to attack Manhattan. Now, when it comes to Iceman and Beast, they're still on the aircraft that belongs to Apocalypse. And so you have our two heroes wonder, what can they do on the aircraft? How can they stop Apocalypse? And so you then have Jean Grey try to have a conversation with one of the four horsemen of Apocalypse, and that would be Feynman, better known as Autumn. That is her real name. Now, here's the thing about Autumn, though. Jean Grey realized that she is a young girl who was most likely tricked by Apocalypse to join his side. Because when it comes to Feynman, or Autumn, she was a young girl that had an eating disorder. Now, the reason why she had an eating disorder, because of her mutant ability, where every single time she would try to touch food, it would just turn to dust. She was basically destroying any kind of meal that was put in front of her, which of course led to her being unable to actually eat. And so with that all being said, she gained a eating disorder. But Apocalypse said, I can help fix that for you. I can help control your powers, but at the same time, you will be able to eat again. Now, with all that being said, is Jean Grey trying to help her realize that she's helping out an evil mutant. But for her sake, it's kind of like, he's helping me out. He's actually helping me control my powers. Now, in the middle of their battle, she is actually teleported away into a Captain America book, which does tie into the Fall of the Mutant storyline. Now we do jump over to Cyclops, who's fighting against War, one of the four horsemen of Apocalypse. Now when it comes to War, we actually saw him in the Mutant Massacre event, where Apocalypse appeared to recruit him. Because remember, he was a soldier that was seriously injured. He was paralyzed from the neck down. Now of course, thanks to Apocalypse, he was able to repair his body, where we come to find out that War has the ability to cause explosions by clapping his hands. Now when it comes to War, the reason why he wants to kill off the humans is because he was a soldier that was seriously injured, and the American government is not giving out any kind of money to help other soldiers who are in need. Instead, most of their money goes into creating more weapons to help them win wars across the world. And so for War, the four horsemen of Apocalypse, he believes that the human race deserves to be killed off, because how do you not care about other people who are suffering? That is not okay at all. Now, when it comes to War, he is stopped by Cyclops. And once he's stopped by Cyclops, you have Jean Grey and Cyclops being able to regroup. And so we jump back over to Iceman and Beast trying their best to fight against Apocalypse. Now here's the thing though, when it comes to Apocalypse, he's trying to warn them that the more damage they do to his aircraft, the most likely this aircraft is going to crash into Manhattan, causing a lot of damage across the city. And so even though he tells our heroes that by the time he does, it's too late. Beast and Iceman done a lot of damage, and you have the aircraft beginning to hit different buildings in Manhattan. And so we jump back over to Cyclops and Jean Grey, who are on the outside of the aircraft and just watching this aircraft begin to hit buildings left and right. And that is a huge problem. Now, when it comes to our heroes on the outside, they want to find a way to help out Iceman and Beast. But unfortunately, they can't do that because they are confronted by Archangel. And here's the thing, Archangel is trying to kill them, and Jean Grey is not trying to fight back because she still believes that her best friend, the man that she almost fell in love with, is still inside there somewhere, that she may have the ability to actually reach him. Now, when it comes to Cyclops, he's more saying, no, our friend is gone. We have no choice here. We have to go ahead and fight against our old best friend. Now, while you have our two heroes trying their best to fight against both death, but also fight against pestilence, well, that is the moment you have the power pack arrive to help out X-Factor to fight against the Horsemen of Apocalypse, but to also make sure the aircraft does not crash into Manhattan. Now, you're probably wondering, hey, Fresh, who in the world is the power pack? Now, we saw them back in the Mutant Massacre storyline. They only had one chapter and that was it. But when it comes to Power Pack, they are a group of kids, children, who had received powers from an alien. That's all you really need to know about Power Pack. Because every once in a while, they do have a crossover with the X-Men. Like again, for example, the Mutant Massacre. And they also have a chapter in this crossover as well. Either way, they had just arrived in time to help X-Factor find a way to defeat the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse, but to also make sure that aircraft does not crash into Manhattan. And so once you have everybody being able to get back on the aircraft, you do have Archangel trying his best to kill off his old friends. Now it does lead into the moment where he does cut Iceman in half. Now real quick, this was still the era where we had no idea how Iceman powers truly worked. And so we're still trying to figure out how powerful he really was. And so even though Archangel had cut Iceman in half, well, he was in his ice form. And so he is able to put himself back together. But you have Iceman tell Archangel, hey man, listen, I wanted you to believe that you had killed me off because I knew my death would break you out of Apocalypse control. And honestly, it works. And so you have Archangel no longer trying to be a horseman of Apocalypse. Now, when it comes to the aircraft of Apocalypse, so much damage was done, it is for sure about to crash into Manhattan. And so you have Apocalypse wanting to leave with his two horsemen and his new recruitment. And that would be Caliban. Because remember, Caliban wants revenge against the people who had destroyed his home, which was the Marauders. And so he is hoping that Apocalypse will be able to give him the same upgrade like he did for Archangel. And so while you have Apocalypse leave, Archangel is no longer a horseman of Apocalypse, but now Caliban is. But on top of that, this aircraft is about to crash into Manhattan. Now, luckily for our heroes, they were able to crash the aircraft into the Hudson River. Now, after doing that, they're then confronted by a bunch of reporters. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to the Fall of the Mutants story arc, this is the beginning point where you have the humans begin the process of trying to find more ways to get rid of mutants. The hatred towards mutants has now reached an all new high. And so as soon as X-Factor gets out of the aircraft, they are instantly blamed for what happened to the Hudson River with the aircraft crashing inside of it. But you have Cyclops say, no, it wasn't us. It was an evil mutant. But here's the thing, we are X-Factor, and we are here to basically tell you that no matter what, we're going to try to make sure that humans and mutants can live together in harmony. You may hate us, but we don't hate you. And so please, allow us to show you the right way when it comes to treating us, because we are also humans. Yes, we are mutants, but we are still humans of Earth. And so this is Cyclops saying, only judge us for what we have done. Don't judge us for who we are. Now that ends X-Factor issue number 25. And so getting into the next chapter is actually going to be a tie-in from the Power Pack series. And we pick up with issue number 35. Now guys, remember, when it comes to Power Pack, they were a group of children that had received powers from an alien. And then with those powers, they became a young superhero team. Now when it comes to their parents, they have no idea that their children is actually a group of superheroes. Now something else I do want to mention about this tie-in, most of this chapter takes place before the last chapter. Because remember, in the last chapter, Power Pack appeared out of nowhere to help X-Factor fight against the Four Horsemen of Apocalypse. But the question was, where in the world did they come from? This book right here answers that question for us. And so when we jump into this chapter, we do pick up with Power Pack being grounded. Yes, you heard that right. They are grounded. Now, not all of them, really only the older siblings are grounded. And matter of fact, the youngest one, Katie, she makes fun of her siblings for being grounded. And with them being grounded, unfortunately, all they can do is just read their books and watch whatever that she is watching on TV. Now, their parents are not home at the moment, and this is going to lead us into how in the world they got involved in the Fall of the Mutant story arc. Because while at home, you do have their father call them and say, hey, where is your mother? I have been trying to get a hold of her. And you have the kids say, hey, Dad, Mom is not here. Matter of fact, Mom is back in the city riding the subway. She might be home very soon. But the problem is there is a blackout. Now, this blackout is being caused because what is happening between X Factor and Apocalypse. And so with this battle out there happening, you have the entire city losing energy left and right. And matter of fact, when it came to the last chapter, you had Apocalypse tell our heroes, with them trying to destroy his aircraft, well, it began to absorb energy and light, which means that it began to cause blackouts all over the city. Now, when it comes to the Power Pack, they begin to get very worried about their mother, who's out there in the city that currently has no power. But on top of that, you have the news reports come in on the radio talking about what is happening in the city, with X Factor fighting against the four horsemen of Apocalypse. And there are places getting blown up left and right because of those battles. And so you have Power Pack begin to get worried about their mother. Now, they realize they can't leave because they are grounded. Well, you have Katie say, I'm not grounded, and I want to make sure that our mother is okay. And so she leaves the house to go look for her mother. Now, when it comes to Katie, she is able to find a subway train that her mother is on. But that subway train is currently being attacked by pestilence. And remember, she is one of the horsemen of Apocalypse, and she has the ability to give you a random illness. And so, of course, we see her right now giving everyone on that subway train some random disease. Now, you do have Katie try to jump in and fight against pestilence. But the problem is, though, pestilence is able to touch her. And of course, that begins the process of seeing young Katie getting very sick. And so she has no choice but to run away. But luckily, she was able to have pestilence stop attacking the train that her mother was on. Now, when it comes to the rest of Power Pack, the way they get involved in this mess is that they get very concerned about their younger sister, but also their mother. And more reports are coming in about what is happening in the city. And so you have our young heroes say, we have to go out there and find our sister and find our mother as well. Now, here's the thing, because as soon as they say that, they see Apocalypse aircraft flying over them, and they realize, okay, some things are popping off right now in the city, and we got to at least help out where we can. And so they leave to go find their sister first. Now, once they are able to find their sister, they realize there's something wrong with her. We already know what it is, because she was touched by pestilence. And so you have the other members of the family try to heal her up. Now, at first, they're also being affected by whatever disease that she had received from pestilence. It's very contagious. But once you have the Power Pack come together and use the combination of their powers, they were able to heal her and themselves up just like that. And then they realize they gotta go help out with X Factor when it comes to fighting against the four horsemen of Apocalypse. Now, we can technically skip over the next section, and the reason why, because it picks up where we saw in the last chapter, where you had X Factor and Power Pack work together to fight against the four horsemen of Apocalypse. Now, at the end of that battle, you had X Factor tell the kids to go help out in other areas, because right now, a lot of people are being affected by this battle, while you have X Factor go back onto the aircraft to have one last battle with Apocalypse. And so getting into the next section of the story, we see that Power Pack was the reason why Apocalypse aircraft has landed in the Hudson River. Now remember, we saw X Factor in the last chapter land that thing, but apparently it was thanks to the Power Pack team that kind of helped out with the idea of the ship not crashing into the Statue of Liberty. And so that's really important for them because they did help out and they did save a lot of lives and also save the lives of most likely X Factor as well. And really, their chapter ends with them being able to get home in time before their mother had arrived back at home, to make it seem like they never left at all. And that's really it for their chapter. And this is where we are going to end the first part of our coverage over the fall of the mutants. The next video is going to contain 2 more tie-ins, one for Captain America and one for the Hulk as well. And then we jump back into the main storyline once again with X Factor. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.